Hello and welcome to 3 Minute Gaming. I'm Nathan, and today I'm going to tell you if this game's with their time and bandwidth. Today's game is Cyber Citizen Shockman 2, A New Enemy. The second Shockman has been released, and it takes the series in a slightly different direction. Is it better than its mediocre predecessor? Let's find out. Cyber Citizen Shockman 2, A New Enemy, wow what a name, is the second in the TurboGrafx trilogy, and the only one from said trilogy to be released in the West way back in '92. Like its predecessor, this is a 2D platformer with a similar feel to Mega Man, except this time the game really wants to feel like Mega Man. Let me get into it. Shockman's enjoying a vacation when, aliens invade Earth, and they have a Proto-Man, a copy of Shockman that's also slightly edgier and wants him dead. What's a Shockman or Shockwoman to do? This is a purely linear platformer this time, no clever level select or upgrades or anything like that. The game is primarily 2D platforming of the Mega Man ilk, all the way down to Shockman now shooting from his arm in a pose identical to the Blue Bomber. You can also grab randomly dropped health pickups from enemies as well as bits, basically screen clearing ultra moves that can be burned with a large charge shot. The stages are more Mega Man-esque also in their design, in that they're not only a lot longer, several also add some gimmicks like vertical orientation or using enemies as platforms. They're fine, if mostly a bit uninspired. The game also mixes things up by adding shmup-style horizontal shooting, which is a nice change from 2D platforming. They do unfortunately suffer from the same issues as the platforming though, around Shockman's limited firepower, of only having 3 shots on screen at once or a charge. Bosses appear often, usually to a stage, and vary in terms of quality and difficulty. What they all are is extremely and gloriously weird, as the developers had fans design them all as part of a contest, leading to bizarre fights against golden jumping Aztec statues or H.R. Geiger eyeball monstrosities. Their designs are very memorable to say the least, especially the second fight against Proto-Man, which is brutally unfair. A small story strings all this together, which fleshes out characters from the first game and introduces some new ones, and the game continues to escalate the stakes in entertaining ways as you go from Earth to a sky castle to space itself to defeat the alien emperor. And lastly, like the first game, you can play the whole game in co-op, which is a cool addition in theory. We'll get to that. And that's Cyber Citizen Shockman 2, a sequel almost in name only, as it calls a do-over for most of the first game's mechanics, this time more blatantly copying Mega Man's homework. So what did I like about Shockman 2? Well, control of Shockman is thankfully much better than the previous game, with the wonky momentum gone and the levels generally feeling better designed. Additionally, the dialogue and writing here is actually pretty funny, with the new translation leaning into it. There are jokes that actually land, and the fact the game has even a slightly interesting story is a massive plus for games of this type and era. I also think the music's really good, but I didn't have a bullet point for it, so I'm saying it here. Lastly, like the previous games, the modern upgrades dramatically improve the experience. Thank God for save states, rewinds, and cheats, and there's a ton of extra content, such as manuals, concept art, and so on, for retro nerds like myself who just love that stuff. When it comes to the bad, a lot of bosses in this game are just stupidly unfair, suffering from massively large health bars and undodgeable attacks that lead to unfair deaths, and the shmup stages just exacerbate all this. Additionally, I encountered a ton of bugs, and I thought most of them were probably from the original game itself, but several definitely felt like emulation issues, which is very odd considering Radalakia is usually good about these things. And lastly, co-op, while a cool idea from the previous game, shares a life bar, so if your partner gets hit, you both lose life. And on those previously mentioned bosses, the game becomes pretty much impossible. If you want to play co-op, just turn on infinite life, it's a lot more fun. As you know, I rate games here on a 3-point scale. Must play, maybe consider, and don't bother. And Shockman 2 is honestly a few steps forward and a few steps back. Playing the first few stages, I thought that we might have a hidden gem on our hands, but unfortunately it kneecaps itself with some rough controls, poor bosses, and amateurish level design. While I do think if you enjoy janky retro games and are curious, it might be worth checking out, those unappreciative of the rougher edges of the games of this era should probably give it a pass. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you played Shockman 2, it actually came out in the West as Shockman, if you are one of 6 people that owned a TurboGrafx. But regardless, if you enjoy retro games, maybe go out there and give Shockman 2 a chance. Hey, it's 2 easy plats.